So I'm Aisling. Good morning, everyone, and thank you. I really enjoyed that last conversation. I am a veteran, unfortunately, at this point of the industry. I'm from County Wicklow in Ireland, grew up there, and but have been living in Silicon Valley now for quite a period of time. So I like to think of myself as culturally bilingual. And so when the Yanks do certain things, I'm like, oh, Europe's going to hate that, so I can bring it in. I'm here today with my colleagues from Meir, who heads up product management, and also with Graham, who is the SE, the head of SEs here in the UK. So both of my colleagues here are the brains. They have their brains and their hands in the product and with the customers the whole time. So quick question. How many of you have adjusted your investment portfolio in the last 6 months? When you were doing that, how many of you looked at one of your stocks and just adjusted one and didn't look at the rest? You wouldn't do it that way, right? I think at a time like this, we're all looking at our retirement funds and our various investments, and we're looking at them as a whole. We're looking at our risk profile, and we should be. Silicon Valley is panicking right now, I have to say, and they always do, though, so there will be ripple effects. But so we really do need to look at it as a whole. Now, I'm finding that finally there is some change going on in the cybersecurity space in America, and it's something that I heard being talked about here in this last session. It feels like we're moving from cybersecurity management into risk management, and that's where a lot of you were talking at the end. In the last just 6 months, I've talked to a lot of CISOs who 3 years ago, CISOs of major US corporations that 3 years ago would have defined themselves as a cybersecurity leader working on trying to make sure they are fully secure. And I think boards were asking stupid questions of, are we secure? And I've seen that there's a big difference now finally coming in. I think it's actually, I always feel like there's a lot more pragmatism sometimes in Europe with these things, so I think you've been ahead of this curve a little bit, but we're finally seeing that this change is starting to happen in the US now, where you're seeing people looking at it as, how do I manage the risk of my business, manage my risk portfolio to an extent. Often we were talking earlier about the cell phone and how it got adopted in Europe much more quickly than it got adopted in the US, and it was because there was a need where the landlines weren't as mature here, et cetera, and so the cell phone got adopted quickly. In the US, it was slow because there was infrastructure. Similarly, I think some of the most sophisticated companies, and one of the gentlemen here said he was financial services, especially financial services, are some of the slowest to modernize and move forward because they have these huge incumbent teams that they put in place 20 years ago and started doing things that at the time were very forward-leaning, and now they don't know how to actually move out of that and modernize. And so I definitely feel other industries are leading the way and other countries are leading the way. So congratulations, I think you're ahead, but like I said, I do feel like America is now starting to really think about risk management. And that's what I want to talk about today. Meir said, we are in the external attack surface management business with CyCognito. Yes and no. We have an EASM product, but I think you're in, and I believe we're in the external risk management business. EASM, you kind of grandfather's EASM, and I'll say that with regards to the risk IQs and expanses of the world, et cetera. They did a great job getting things started. They went out there when nobody was thinking about managing their external risk. But to a great extent, they defined external EASM as what I would say is discovery or visibility. And that's where it started and stopped. The problem with that is that you aren't putting your assets in context. You need to know what you're responsible for. You need to look at your whole portfolio the way you would with your investments. But then you need to have it in context so that you can decide where your priorities are. And so what we're going to talk to you today about is how you do that. Not only find, that's table stakes, you have to find everything, but then you have to look at it in context. So maybe one of the best ways to put it is, I think it was November. It was 12 o'clock on a Friday night and I had had a few drinks. in California, and I got a text from a gentleman in the risk management or security business at BP here in the UK. And think about the timing, it was midnight, and he said, am I vulnerable to Log4j? Are my assets vulnerable? Now this was someone who I had worked with in the past at another company and was in the process of looking at CyCognito to become a CyCognito customer. He wasn't a customer of ours yet. And so when he said, am I vulnerable? I was like, Jesus, trying to get through the cloud of wine and stuff and think, what's Log4j? It had just broken in the UK. America wasn't even aware yet. In California, we hadn't heard anything. What Ritz at BP did not say to me is, are my unknown assets vulnerable to Log4j? Because I could have answered, I could have gone, I had to call these people and say, can we run this and look at it? We were in POV with him at the time, can we look at all of his assets? But we weren't going to just look at the ones he hadn't known about, because then I'd be giving him a partial answer, and he would then react with that partial data. I had to get him the answer, which is not only the assets he hadn't known about, which were significant, but also the assets he did know about, and how do you prioritize across the board. And so we can talk about that, and Meir is actually going to talk to you a little bit today about Log4j and how we were able to help all of our customers very, very quickly understand, looking across the board, how vulnerable were they, where were the priorities, how should they set their priorities. We can also talk to you today, though, about Shell. And I pick on that one because people didn't have to react. So in the similar way that when I responded to Ritz after a few hours of checking and said, yes, let us show you where you are vulnerable with regards to Log4j, we were also able to, with Shell, very quickly respond, and you know what? I don't think you need to overreact to this one. Very important, getting back to the last conversation, for all of you, so that, because right now I feel like traditionally the reaction has been, we all panic when we hear anything, right? Every one of these vulnerabilities sounds like it's going to be equally problematic. And how many times have each one of you gone out to the business executives kind of saying, we're screwed, lock down the hatches, we may have to, and you lose credibility, critical credibility. I thought our team and the lady over there was really driving that the good that came out of, and I know Meir was saying the recruiting, but I think from table 7, the good that came out of the pandemic was the awareness from the executive teams, the awareness across the company that security was no longer an add-on function. And that, I think, is huge, and the fact that now I do think boards and executive teams are saying, like I said, what is our risk in various areas? How can we manage that risk? There's more sophistication, more awareness of the criticality. That the holiday season, a retailer can be taken down, not because they didn't choose the right product or they didn't choose the right go-to-market for the product, but because they can have a denial of service attack or something that's going to take them out of it. So we have to really look holistically. So we will show you today how we do that. At BP, I know Ritz said, years ago, he used to look at, there were unknown unknowns. And then when he started working with the first generations of EASM, he had, and I always wanted to be, he had known unknowns. He now knew they existed. But he needed to get to, and with us, known knowns. You know they're there, and you know who owns them, what they look like, what they're attached to, what damage could be done, et cetera. So just very quickly, I have one slide you'll be glad to know. Okay, so my one slide here is, as I said, I think table stakes. You have to know what you own. I was a founding member of one of the major crowdsourced security testing companies, and I'm a huge believer in crowdsourcing your testing and the human element that is very, very necessary. But one of the questions that struck me and why I chose CyCognito, to be honest, was how many sophisticated CISOs of huge organizations would say, first, can you tell me what I own? I don't know. So question to all of you, how many assets do you think, how many web apps, how many web apps do you think the average enterprise owns? How many? So we have a lot of enterprise customers now, and so what we're doing is really aggregating our data, and so 5,000 web apps. So I used to have companies like American Express. At the time, they thought they had about 2,000 to 3,000, and they would say to me, I can pen test the transactional apps, or the ones that I see as most critical. Now we all know those aren't necessarily the ones that you're going to be breached through, but I can pen test these ones, but that's about 10%, right? And so that's been a problem. So how many subsidiaries do you think each enterprise has? Subsidiaries. 95. On average, enterprises have 95. Now, at a time like this, there is consolidation going on. People are also getting rid of assets. As you all know, as security professionals, a business can get rid of an asset. You don't necessarily get rid of the cyber risk associated with that asset. And you don't have a huge platform to stand on when you go in and say, I didn't know we still owned it, right? You have to know as part of managing your portfolio. Orgs are usually unaware of about 10 to 30% of their subsidiaries. So that's, again, our own data that we find when we go out and we start working with customers. About 10 to 30% of what we find, they didn't know that they actually had them from a subsidiary perspective. Last one of these questions, I guess, what percentage of your attack surface do you think fluctuates or is volatile each month? Fluctuates, not as volatile, each month.
60%?
No, actually, this one is only 5.5%. Each month changes. The problem is you don't know what 5%. And there's a lot of movement going on. Now, when the conversation was happening earlier, I have to say I would have loved if we had been doing an analysis right at the time of everyone working from home, because I would imagine the amount of change in attack surface that you were all referencing earlier was massive at that point, but we were young enough and growing, and we weren't analyzing our portfolio as a in its entirety. But anyway, 5.5% and 6% of web apps, 6% of web app vulnerabilities account for 90% of the issues. So one of the things Meir is going to talk to you about is, I'm sorry, I should have been moving down, sorry. So you have to find it all, right? You have to find your attack surface, you have to know it. And for me, this is table stakes of EASM. Now, I think we're the best in the market at doing this. We find more than anyone else. A lot of companies will promise a lot. They're using Shodan or some open source thing. And some of them will do a decent job at visibility. You need to do a great job at visibility and finding things. But then more importantly, I think, is you have to be able to map it. A lot of my security customers say they lose a huge amount of credibility when they do go in, as I said with the Log4j and Shell thing, when they go in and say, we found this asset, who owns it? And you're running this, or you put everyone on alert. You need to be able to go in with that information. You need to feel confident that it's real information, that you don't have false positives, and that you're going to the business owner and saying, we have an issue here, you're not causing panic across the board, so that people aren't becoming immune to you. A huge issue for a lot of CISOs, right? People are immune to them, because they're constantly the one saying we could have a problem. If we're going to really do risk management effectively, you have to know who owns it. Can you imagine going back to your stock portfolio where you're like, geez, I need to change my ratios. I don't know who to call. I don't know how I manage that. It's unheard of. But we've had that problem in cybersecurity. So for us, we'll give you that context of who owns it. That contextualization, I think, is absolutely critical. And we'll do that through that security testing of the whole of your portfolio. And then the prioritization. With that, and we give you the criteria, you get to set what do you care about. For different organizations, that's different. I remember when I was working with Domino's in a past world, they were obviously wanted to have great security. Domino's is a fantastic company. They are a technology company that delivers pizza, and that was talked about earlier, that everyone's a tech company. And they really took that mindset. But they knew that denial of service attack was what they really needed to protect from. That was first and foremost from a prioritization perspective. Sometimes CVSS scores are not going to tell you what you need to protect. The biggest apps are not going to tell you what you need to protect. What you need to look at is a lot of different factors to realize what is the path of least resistance. Where are you most vulnerable? Even Gartner, and God knows they're a follower, but even Gartner right now is starting to say, they're starting to coin, we're saying risk management, they're saying exposure management. I don't know which word. I think internally all of you deal more with risk. That's what you're going to have to answer to boards on, is risk, and answer to the executives. But this gives you the ability to manage your teams, to set those priorities, but also to report up. The reports that Meir will show you allow you to report up to what's my progress. Here's where I stand today. This is my attack surface. This is how many issues I have. And this is how many are critical. And then at the next meeting, you're saying, of the 10 or 12 that we said were critical, this is the progress we've made against them. Super, super important to be able to show that score. Traditionally, companies have used scores, and they use them just to have a score. I've talked to many CISOs who say, I work with a couple of different companies who use scores because that way I have something to manage up. I don't trust it. I can't manage across and down because it's not accurate information. That's unacceptable. You need to actually have scores that mean something for your own environment, not just generic scores. So we can give you those so that you can actually manage your organization, set your goals for your employees, set your goals for your management to show that progress. And then eventually, excuse me, you can work with your pen testing, your own red team, whatever vendor you're using, but now you're not saying to them, test over here, try this, let's go over here, or let's just keep cycling through and hope we're covering the critical points. You're, with intelligence, be able to say, this is where you need to go. This is where I want you to focus. It's not always going to be the obvious places. So doing our version of EASM, modern EASM, which is truly external risk management, allows you to really set those boundaries across the board and be very much efficient and effective in how you're managing your organization. And hopefully the pilot example, and the gentleman who wrote up that you know, when a plane goes down, it's not always how did the pilot screw it up. There's a black box, etc. We want to get CISOs out of the business of being on defense all the time, right? Get you into that offensive position where you have the data, you have the intelligence, and you're now a business leader within the company talking about how you set those priorities. So Meir will do the good stuff here. He'll give you the demo, and Graham will help him with that.
Okay, hi everyone. Meir Asiskovich. I'm from the Tel Avivian side of CyCognito. Happy to be here. Thank you very much, everyone. So yeah, as Aisling just told us, when it comes to risk management, let me just switch. Oh, sorry, not that. Okay. When it comes to my risk management, it's all starting with a process that allows me to do it. Okay, when our customers calling us in the middle of the night asking us, am I protected, or where am I vulnerable? It doesn't come from, you know, we are going to look for the information. Usually this information is already there because we are monitor this kind of information all over the time. Where it gets to serious situations, like Log4j or Shell or Okta, whatever, just name it. We have our tools that already contains or can represent very nicely this information. For example, this advisory board, wherever you can select any publisher, official publisher of advisories. You can find CISA, you can find NSA, you can find anything that you probably know. You can just pick one of them, and and this will show you exactly what assets are vulnerable. This is a demo environment, so I'm not sure that we are going to see any, but generally speaking, just to show you how simple it is and how quickly our customers could find information about those situations. So they didn't have to wait too long. You just come here, and in very few hours, they can clearly see the whole picture of where they are vulnerable, where are their risks, and what they can do about it. Down here, you can see a list of assets that should be, that might be vulnerable for those advisories. You can also pick any of the CVEs related to this advisory, so you can, touch specifically on them. And again, this is a kind of the end game, okay? Because this information is here, and these tools are here because we do it all the time. Okay, we keep discover more and more assets. We keep monitor those assets and the change in your attack surface every day, every week, every month. We have our cadence for different services. We look for, as you mentioned, web applications. Web applications are also APIs that our organizations are exposing outside. Okay. Sorry, okay. So this is kind of a way for us to show everyone, okay, so if you are fronting something, if you want to be aware for where you are according to this advisory or that situation, the information is already there. Now, I'll take you through some preliminary steps that helps us to get there. But just before it goes there, I would show you the executive report that Aisling was mentioning. So once in a while, we want to see where we are. We want to see the progress. We want to show our management where we are, where it comes to our attack surface, what we know about it, are we taking the right steps, are we improving, what are the risks that we want to manage or focus during the next 3 months, 6 months, year, whatever. So this kind of a report, and we have a few more of them, but this kind of a report with all those clear grades and scores can tell you how good am I taking the right decisions, the right directions. My team is working efficiently around it. So this is another kind of tool that allows you to monitor the progress. And again, this is kind of as a report that you would like to see on a monthly cadence, or maybe on 3 months, or whenever you have to report to the board or management. So you can use these kind of tools. But let's take now one step back, and I want to take a look into the system and how it works.
It would have been interesting, wouldn't it? And I'll
Sure.
stand near you too. It would have been interesting because, again, our team was talking about earlier the fact that everyone feels they're in better shape today than they were 2 years ago when everyone had to go work from home and things. It would have been fascinating to have the report right after that as to how bad it was,
Yeah.
and then be able to show how much progress the security team has made. So think about being able to show what you're doing on that basis.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry? Oh. Yeah, okay, let's try this. Okay, so, great. So it all starts with my organization. Okay, I do want to know what are my subsidiaries, what are the departments that I'm working with. And probably one of my key questions is, who is responsible for these assets or for that asset? Who can help me to take care of this risk? Okay, who is the one I have to work with? So this graph, or sorry, this chart can show you very clearly what are, sorry for that. Yeah.
He's smart, he's just not a...
Yeah. Yeah. So this chart can tell me, okay, this is your organizational structure. These are the organizations. This is how they are organized. And you can see clearly who is doing a good job and who's got some opportunity to get better, okay, according to the grades that they got by our algorithms. And then you can always contact the responsible people and make sure that they are doing the right steps and they are aware for the situation. As part of this graph, I can also see how many assets they have in risk and how many severe issues they should fix soon. You can also take a click and look into this organization, get more information like where is under this the wider organizations, who is the owner and what else we can do and what other assets belong to it. Because maybe they have the same problem or about to get the same problem too. So this tool, what we call a discovery path, can actually show you how we got to this organization, because in many, many cases we are fronting the question of where did you brought this organization or this organization from? I mean, this is not mine. And we show them that and they said, okay, yeah, it's mine. You're right. So we see it all the time. One of the unique things in CyCognito that this is done automatically by our services. So just imagine that we go out to the internet, we scan and discover those organizations. Automatically, we build the structure. I know that some of the other players will do it manually and a lot of manual work, or we'll ask your team to do it manually, which takes a lot of time. In our case, this is done automatically, and I would be happy to tell more, but probably not now, because it will take us the whole day. So once I know about my organizations, I do want to know, okay, so what are the assets that are taking part in my attack surface? So here you can see a long list of assets. We are talking about web applications, including APIs, okay, not just web application for humans, but also for machines. IP ranges, IP addresses, domains, certificates, and a few more types of assets that we discover. And for each of those assets, probably for the practitioners, okay, the main questions would be, why do you think it's mine? So again, if I go to my discovery path, I can see very clearly why CyCognito find this asset belongs to this organization. And in many, many cases, people are reacting like, okay, I'm not sure this is mine, or how did you get here? This discovery path usually show them very, very clearly how we got there and why it's there and why they should take care for it. Other questions would be, what are the platforms that are installed? Actually, what is the role of this asset? What does it do? So here you can see all the environments and the platforms that are involved, so you can get to better know whether it's a database asset or any other thing that I should take a look. So you can see all the services that are installed, all the applications, the connections that it uses. This will also help you to better understand what is the risk and how would you like to protect it, because you have the context of this asset in your attack surface. So yeah, here you can see what installed, and in addition to that, we also go to external services, external sources, and bring more information about the asset, like who is or any other third party that we can even aggregate more information about that asset. So again, would help your teams to better prioritize the risk and what they have to do first. Okay. So this is all about the assets. Again, it's not all about it, but yeah, just in general overview, this is how it looks like. And then when we get to the issues are actually vulnerabilities that we found for each of those assets. Again, the main questions, what is the problem? What is the CV? So all the information is listed here. You can see also the attacker interest, and this involves with threat intelligence that we bring into the system. So this is not just about the idea of having this vulnerability, but also to get to know better how the attackers might use it. So in this case, we can also bring some information from external frameworks like Metasploit in this example, that once will tell us a bit more about the exploitation policy or processes that the attacker might use, and a bit more information about the underground activity, what we could find around these vulnerabilities. And we also provide on the right side the ability to try it by yourself. I mean, if your red teams or any other team would like to try by themselves this vulnerability, they can do it here. I mean, to try the exploitation tool. In many cases, you'll see a few of them because each vulnerability can be used with several ways. So on the right side, we give them the instructions how to do it by themselves. And once this issue was reported as remediated, you can also click here for revalidation. This means that we will get a revalidation request, and our services will do it automatically for you. So you can actually work with your IT teams or whoever has to remediate this vulnerability, and then ask CyCognito to revalidate it. So try it again and try to see if it was fixed or not. You do urge me, but I want just to make sure that we all look at one more thing, and this is about our workflows. So we all use many, many tools, and when we work with IT teams, not just security teams, usually we don't use emails or phones. We use Jira, ServiceNow, I don't know, just name it. So we want to make sure that the information that we gather, the discoveries and the scan results that we found are not just taken by humans to their peers, but we have a whole system that helps you to create integrations with those tools. So we have, you have the opportunity to integrate CyCognito with Jira, Slack, ServiceNow, just name any of these tools, and you can also build your own recipes that actually are logic playbooks or logic way where you can say, okay, for this kind of assets with this kind of vulnerability, I would like to pass a Slack message to the owner of this organization that will take care for this. And let me know once it was remediated. So this will falls into your day-to-day operations and processes anyway. Okay, so it's not like an external system that you have to watch all the time.